Kund Giri Govardhan ki jai.
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 Vrindavan Dham ki jai.
Jai.
Mayapur Navadvip Dham ki jai.
Jai.
Ganga Mai Yamuna Mai ki jai.
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 Bhakti Devi Tulsi Maharani ki jai.
Jai.
Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.
Jai.
Gaura Premanande.
Hari Bo.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
Glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
All glories to the lotus feet of Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to
Hare
Sri
Hare
Prabhupada.
Hare Bo.
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Vitale Srimate Bhakti Granta Swamina Tanamani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurvana Pachani Nearly Shesha Shunyavadi Pashchati Deshatarne Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnana Jnana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhya Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Good morning, everyone. Greetings from a fairly cold morning in Kentucky.
Oh, good morning.
Hare Krishna.
You're joining me on my neighbor's porch. They're so kind to let me use their Wi-Fi. I can actually show a piece of my property. So after this fence, there's a road. After that road, there's a river. And on the other side of that river is my property. So where you can see the sun hitting the canopy on the other side, that's my place. I don't have electricity or Wi-Fi there, so I can't join you from my property, but we can join you from very close. So
Thank you for making this arrangement to be with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I love talking about Srimad Bhagavatam. So today's verse is, we are still in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. We're in the second chapter. Today's text is verse 9. These last few days have been really important Bhagavatam verses. Anyone who has gone through studying Srimad Bhagavatam formally, a lot of the verses that we've gone through in these past few weeks are the ones that we're meant to memorize. Srila Prabhupada quoted them quite often. And so in today's class, we're actually going to revisit some of those because they're mentioned again in the purport. But this is a very important section. So today's verse, text 9. And before we begin, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate
Vasudevaya.
Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Vasudevaya.
Okay. Dharmasya hyapavargyasya nartortayopakopate nartasya dharmaikantasya kamo labhaya hi smritaha. Dharmasya hyapavargyasya nartortayopakopate nartasya dharmaikantasya kamo labhaya hi smritaha. Dharmasya hyapavargyasya nartortayopakopate nartasya dharmaikantasya kamo labhaya hi smritaha. Please chant.
Dharmasya hi apavargasya narto nartaya pakalpate nartasya dharma ikantasya kamolabhaya hi smrita.
Dharmasya hai apavargasya narto arthayopakalpate नार्थस्य धर्मैकान्तस्य कामो लभाय हि स्मृत्यः. Hare Krishna.
धर्मस्य हि अपवर्गस्य न अर्थाय उपकल्पते न अर्थस्य धर्म एक अन्तस्य कामलाभाय हि स्मृता. हरे कृष्ण.
Vijay Prabhu.
हरे कृष्ण धर्मस्य अपवर्गस्य नार्थो अर्थाय उपकल्पते नार्थस्य धर्मकान्तेस्य
We lost him.
Bob Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Dharmasya he apavargayasya narto artaya pakalpate nartasya dharmakantasya kamolabhaya hi smartaha. Thank you.
Dharmasya hi apavargasya natho arthayo kalpakalpate नाथस्य धर्मैकान्तस्य कामो लाभाय हि स्मृतः.
Anyone else?
धर्मस्य हि अपवर्गस्य नार्थोऽर्थाय उपकल्पते नाथस्य धर्मैकान्तस्य कामो लाभाय हि स्मृतः.
धर्मस्य हि अपवर्गस्य नार्थोऽर्थाय उपकल्पते नाथस्य धर्मकान्तस्य कामो लाभाय स्मृतः.
Dharmasya, occupational engagement. He, certainly. Apavargasya, ultimate liberation. Na, not. Arthaha, end. Arthaya, for material gain. Upakalpate is meant for. Na, neither. Artasya, of material gain. Dharma eka antasya, for one who is engaged in the ultimate occupational service. Kamaha, sense gratification. Labhaya, attainment of. He, exactly. Smritaha is described by the great sages. Translation. All occupational engagements are certainly meant for ultimate liberation. They should never be performed for material gain. Furthermore, according to sages, one who is engaged in the ultimate occupational service should never use material gain to cultivate sense gratification. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. We have already discussed that pure devotional service to the Lord is automatically followed by perfect knowledge and detachment from material existence. But there are others who consider that all kinds of different occupational engagements, including those of religion, are meant for material gain. The general tendency of any ordinary man in any part of the world is to gain some material profit in exchange for religious or any other occupational service. Even in the Vedic literatures, for all sorts of religious performances, an allurement of material gain is offered, and most people are attracted by such allurements or blessings of religiosity. Why are such so-called men of religion allured by material gain? Because material gain can enable one to fulfill desires, which in turn satisfy sense gratification. This cycle of occupational engagements includes so-called religiosity followed by material gain, and material gain followed by fulfillment of desires. Sense gratification is the general way for all sorts of fully occupied men. But in the statement of Sutta Goswami, as per the verdict of Srimad Bhagavatam, this is nullified in the present shloka. One should not engage himself in any sort of occupational service for material gain only, nor should material gain be utilized for sense gratification. How material gain should be utilized is described as follows. So we'll go on the verse again. All occupational engagements are certainly meant for ultimate liberation. They should never be performed for material gain. Furthermore, according to sages, one who is engaged in the ultimate occupational service should never use material gain to cultivate sense gratification. So the first two sentences of this verse, it gives a yama and a niyama. Yama are rules that are to be followed, and niyama are regulations. These are things that we are not to do. So the first sentence, all occupational engagements are certainly meant for ultimate liberation. So that's what all occupational engagements are meant for. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, yat karosi yadashnasi yajjuhosi dadasi yat tapasyasi konteya tat kurusva madarpanam. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer, give away, whatever austerities you perform, and whatever sacrifices that you do those, O son of Kunti, as an offering to me. So every occupational engagement, no matter what it is, they're meant for ultimate liberation. This is the way Krishna designed the world. And then the next sentence, they should never be performed for material gain. So this is what not to do. We shouldn't perform our occupational engagements for material gain. That's the wrong way to do it. Then, so these first two sentences, they're like a thesis. They're a statement. Again, it includes a yama and a niyama. And then what's happening in the next sentence is it's further clarifying. It's further clarifying the niyama part. And then the next verse, which the purport hinted to, will further cover the yama aspect. So first there's a thesis that is given in this verse, and then there's an explanation of why you should follow the one part of it, and then later in the next verse it'll explain further why we should follow the yama part. So the niyama part, further explained, is furthermore, according to the sages, one who is engaged in the ultimate occupational service. So not just any occupation. We're talking, so the first part is saying that any occupational engagement is meant for ultimate liberation. And here, according to the sages, one who is engaged in the ultimate occupational service, which is one's Sanatana Dharma, the engagement in Krishna service, should never use material gain to cultivate sense gratification. Now, this is a very practical instruction for all of us. Sometimes we find that when we are engaging in service, depending on what it is, it really doesn't matter what it is, but sometimes, for example, we will get a donation from someone. They see that we're engaging in some nice service to Krishna and they want to contribute to that, right? So out of the kindness of their heart, they give some donation. And when one is a neophyte devotee, sometimes it can be, sometimes this can be challenging, because what happens is we receive a donation and we think, oh, there's so many things I can do with this donation, you know, and sometimes when we're neophyte devotees, we spend some of that donation on things that aren't directly connected in our consciousness to Krishna. Maybe we'll get ourselves a nice tasty treat from the store and we'll forget to offer it to Krishna. We'll just be so excited that, oh yes, I got this donation. Now I can, now I can get my favorite ice cream or something like that. And then we get it. And then, caught up in the moment, we're just thinking about our own sense. We're not, we weren't thinking, I'm going to get some ice cream for Krishna and offer it. No, we weren't thinking that. We were thinking, I haven't had this in a while and I really like it. And so these are some examples of how one can use the fruits of the ultimate occupational duty and sense gratification. And we have to be careful not to do that. So I'm going to actually just go through the purport again, sentence by sentence. You don't have to bring it up, but so the purport starts, we have already discussed that pure devotional service to the Lord is automatically followed by perfect knowledge and detachment from material existence. So this was 2 verses ago. Kaivalya Prabhu gave a great class on that. But there are others who consider that all kinds of different occupational engagements, including those of religion, are meant for material gain. So this verse is just talking about the conditioned soul's tendency, the conditioned soul's tendency to enjoy their senses. So anytime that there's material gain, they're going to use that for their sense enjoyment. And the people in general, the conditioned souls, feel that any kind of occupational engagement, whether it's, a job that they've, been trained to do, or if it's, some sort of cultural thing that they're following, a religion, that no matter whatever they're doing, there should be some sort of benefit for them, right? The attitude of the conditioned soul is that, if I'm putting forth some effort, I better be getting something out of it. It's the law of material nature. It's action and reaction. So if I'm going to go through so much trouble to do something, I better get something in return. This is the mentality of the conditioned soul. Continuing on, the general tendency of any ordinary man in any part of the world is to gain some material profit in exchange for religious or other occupational service. Right? So that's just further confirming what we were talking about. Now, this next part, even in the Vedic literatures, for all sorts of religious performances, an allurement for material gain is offered, and most people are attracted by such allurements or blessings of religiosity. So we're all familiar with, there are some verses in Bhagavad Gita where Krishna is instructing Arjuna, and Arjuna is talking about, following the Vedic path. And Krishna is saying you shouldn't be distracted by the flowery words of the Vedas. Someone has a live mic there. That's okay. We got it. So we see these statements, talking about the flowery words of the Vedas and how sometimes they can become a distraction to those. And this is brought out in this purport too, that in these Vedic literatures, all sorts of religious performances, there's an allurement for material gain that's offered to entice people to engage in religiosity. And as we've mentioned before several times, I don't think I ever go to class without quoting this verse, Vedaischa sarvam aham eva vedyo vedantakrit vedavid evachaham, that Krishna, he's the knower of the Vedas, he's the compiler of the Vedas, and of all the Vedas, he is to be known. So the goal of all Vedic literature is to entice the hearer or the reader to engage in Krishna's service, to understand who Krishna is. That's the whole purpose of the Vedas. But since there are so many different kinds of conditioned souls at various places in their lives. They have various types of attachments like that. The Vedas have to be worded in such a way to entice those people who are just, straight out sense enjoyers to engage in Krishna service. So they'll give some, some rewards, some benefits. If you do this, then you'll get this, right? And it's like a give and take situation. And so Srila Prabhupada's pointing out that even the Vedas, not only is this the general tendency of man, that if I do something, I want something in return, but even the Vedas, parts of the Vedas encourage this. They'll give some sort of enticement for engaging in proper occupational duty. And so we're going to get into that a little bit later. We'll continue on with the purport though here. Why are such so-called men of religion allured to material gain? Because material gain can enable one to fulfill desires, which in turn satisfy sense gratification. So this is actually a pretty good question that's brought up in this purport. That why are there there are men that claim to be religious, they're following religion, but they're allured by material gain. We see this from time to time, and we have this question. This question's answered often, and Srila Prabhupada answers it right in this purport, because material gain can enable one to fulfill desires, which in turn satisfy sense gratification. So our conditioned nature is that we want to enjoy, and unfortunately, we want to enjoy separately from Krishna. That's why we're here in this material world. And so anytime we can get that enjoyment, we'll take it. This is our conditioned nature. Now, one might assume that when one takes up a religious practice, that all of that goes out the door, that we no longer need to enjoy, especially separate from Krishna, because we are accepting, okay, I'm a servant of God. Everything I do now is for God's pleasure, right? But we can see practically that that's actually not necessarily the case. When we come to spirituality, there's certainly a part of us that is attracted to engaging full-time in the service of Krishna. But we still have that, until we make that full, complete connection to our original position, we still also have this tendency to enjoy our material senses. This is just part of how the false ego works, is that we will accept, at least in theory, that we should be engaging in certain things. But until we really fully accept that, the tendency will still be there. So this is the reason why people who, even though they are dedicated to a religion, they will sometimes be inclined to engage in some sort of sense enjoyment. Now, there's varying degrees of it. Some of it's, seemingly harmless, like eating your favorite flavor of ice cream. And some of it's more harmful, like, taking advantage of others, taking advantage of people's donations, things like that. There are varying degrees of it, but it's within all of us. We'll continue this purport, and then we'll get into the meat of this. This cycle of occupational engagements includes so-called religiosity, followed by material gain, and material gain followed by fulfillment of desires. Sense gratification is the general way for all sorts of fully occupied men. So this is just confirming that this is the general attitude of the conditioned souls, that this is what we're going for. So clearly, when it's offered to us, we're gonna accept it heartily. But in the statement of Sutta Goswami, as per the verdict of Srimad Bhagavatam, this is nullified by the present shloka. One should not engage himself in any sort of occupational service for material gain only, nor should material gain be utilized for sense gratification. So just as a quick summary of of what we've been going over the past, I guess, couple of months now, when we started over at the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam. This verse echoes a lot of points that were previously made. So the first point that I want to bring out is from the second verse of the first chapter, first canto. Dharma projita kaitavotra paramo nirmatsaranam satam vedyam vasavam atravastu shivadam tapa triamulanam. That's the first half of the verse. And that's talking about how the Srimad Bhagavatam rejects any sort of occupational duty that does not, let me actually look it up. So completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated. This Bhagavat Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries. So, as today's verse was mentioning, that all occupational engagements are certainly meant for ultimate liberation, this verse from 112 is, if there is an activity, any activity that's materially motivated, that is completely rejected by the Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's one thing that was echoed in today's verse. Then there were two verses that are commonly memorized by those studying Srimad Bhagavatam. These came up earlier, last week and also, I guess last week. So the one was 126, Savai Pung Sang Paro Dharmo Yato Bhakti Radhokshuje Ahoitu Kyaprati Hatta Yayatma Suprasidati. I guess that was on Friday. The supreme occupation, or dharma, because today's verse not only talked about dharma in general, all occupational engagements, but then it talks about the ultimate occupational service. And so this is echoing what we were talking about there. So the ultimate occupation, or the supreme occupation for all humanity, is that by which men can attain to a loving devotional service to the transcendent Lord. And such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. This is a super important verse. And we're actually going to get a little bit more into that later. But the next verse, 127, Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janatyashu Vairagyam Jnanam Cha Yara Hoitakam. And this was mentioned in the beginning of the purport, knowledge and detachment. And this class was given by Kaivalya Prabhu. By rendering devotional service unto the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna, one immediately acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from the world. And so, as Kaivalya Prabhu was mentioning, that when we engage in bhakti, that these two things automatically come, knowledge and detachment. And then text yesterday's verse, because we're still talking about the occupational duties. So the occupational activities a man performs according to his own position are only so much useless labor if they do not provoke attraction for the message of the personality of Godhead. So today I want to talk about the purpose of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And in order to do that, first we have to talk about the motive behind the Srimad Bhagavatam. So Srila Vyasadeva, he compiled the Vedic literatures, and after compiling many Puranas and a lot of the Vedic literature, the bulk of it, he felt despondent. And we talked about this earlier, how of all the Vedas, Krishna is to be known. But we talked about how sometimes, since the Vedas is reaching out to all different types of men and women, that it has to sometimes give these enticements. Well, if you follow this occupational duty, then you will get this benefit, right? And so Srila Vyasadeva, he sort of understood that people in this age, of course, in the age of Kali, they'll take advantage of that. And instead of following the religious part, they'll just, they'll do the activity to get the benefit, but then they'll never make the connection and they won't make any progress. And so he was feeling despondent. Of course, he was doing the right thing by compiling the Vedas in this way, because otherwise, how can you reach the lower rungs of humanity? You can't get them to engage in devotional service if you don't, give them some sort of enticement. So although he was doing the right thing, his heart was in the right place. He was also, people were becoming distracted by it. They were performing sense gratification in the name of religion. They thought they were performing religious activities because it was there in the Vedas, but really their motivation was completely motivated. It wasn't unmotivated, nor was it uninterrupted. So Srila Vyasadeva was despondent, and he's thinking, all right, what can I do to rectify this situation? And Narada Muni, his guru, came and he said, look, this is what you have to do. You have to talk about pure devotional service. You've done a fine job with the rest of the Vedas. It's teaching people how to come to Krishna, but it can be confusing for them because they're getting distracted by these different promises for sense gratification, for getting something in return for doing what they're doing. So now for this one, for the Bhagavad Purana, you're just going to completely focus on service to Krishna. And so that's what he did. So that's what his motivation was. His motivation was that, people are distracted in this world, and I want to make it clear that this is what has to be done. And so since this is his motivation, then we also understand what the purpose of the Bhagavatam is. So since his motivation was to present bhakti in a way that's that's direct, and it's not in any way distracting, the purpose is to engage the readers or the hearers in unmotivated, uninterrupted devotional service to Krishna, like we were talking about. I guess that was Friday. Ahoiti aprati hata. So in this way, we have this really good, and it's actually an essential litmus test to see if we are applying the teachings of the Srimad Bhagavatam properly. And it also tells us if we're engaging in Krishna's service properly, because those two go hand in hand. The Srimad Bhagavatam's purpose is to teach us how to engage in Krishna's service properly, right? So this is a perfect litmus test to understand, okay, are we engaging in service unmotivated and uninterrupted, ahoitaki and aprati hata, or is our devotional service motivated and flickering due to distractions? That's the question. So I mentioned earlier that neophyte devotees sometimes, and I include myself in neophyte devotees, is that we become easily distracted, and we still have some sort of material motivation. We're still not completely 100% convinced that all we have to do is engage in Krishna service. We still have these tendencies to have some sort of motivation. I'll engage in this activity, but I'm hoping to get something in return. And these things come in usually three forms: profit, adoration, and distinction. So there are some neophyte devotees that engage in devotional service because they want to make some sort of profit off of it. We saw this a lot when there are new devotees, and for example, they'll go out on book distribution, and they start finding out that it's fairly easy to get some donations. You're giving people books, they're giving some donations, and sometimes if a devotee is immature, they'll start trying to use some of that money for their own purposes. They see that, oh, this is an easy way to make money. I'm collecting way more donations than if I were working a part-time job like that. And so, and it's unfortunate, but this is the nature of humans, so we shouldn't be surprised by it. It's something that happens. And then, of course, generally those types fall away, and Krishna doesn't generally keep that sort of person around very long. But they generally also come back later, because there's that mix. There's always a mix. We can't just focus on the bad, or like that, because there's always some good, and so it ends up coming back. So profit, adoration. Some people engage in devotional service because they want a sense of adoration. I gave this big donation, and then they built this temple wing, and it's named after me, and I get that adoration. So that's another way that that devotional service can be motivated. And then distinction, doing something in a way that no one else can do it. Oh, this particular devotee, he chants in such a way that cannot be matched by anyone. And so there's a distinction there. It's a, very, so if that's our motivation. Now, this isn't to mean that, that if there is a distinction made, it doesn't mean that our desire was for that distinction. It could just be that, there's a distinction made, and sometimes there's adoration made, and it's not the goal of the person. But if it is our goal, then clearly we are not unmotivated. Nahoitaki. So then there's apratihata. So apratihata is one that I have more trouble with. So devotees have trouble with different things, being unmotivated or uninterrupted. So I have a bigger problem with the uninterrupted part, depending on what my situation is. So uninterrupted means, if we take a look at our day and we see, how we are engaging our time, what we are doing throughout the day, we can see, and if we're honest with ourselves, we can see, at least I can see, that the way my day is split up, the majority of the time, I'm not focused on Krishna. I may be doing something that I know is, for Krishna, but I'm not focused on him. I'm not thinking, this is directly, me doing something for Krishna. And like I said, depending on the circumstance, that can be, that can be different. But we can see in our lives that, we're so distracted by so many different things that even when we are engaging in japa, meditation, we can see that our mind is going different places. We see something that reminds us of something, and then all of a sudden, we're reminiscing about something that happened back in the day. And, and there we are chanting our japa. We're supposed to be talking to Krishna, direct connection, and, our minds, here and there and everywhere. So let alone when we're actually engaged in, direct service, keeping our mind from being distracted. Just the rest of the day, seeing how many things, pull our attention away from what our ultimate purposes. And so we should keep this in mind. We should be performing this litmus test on a regular basis to see if we're progressively shedding our material motivations, and to see if we're becoming more and more steady and less distracted in our devotional service. And if we perform this test on ourselves, and we monitor, are we getting rid of that motivated devotional service little by little? And are we becoming more and more focused? Are we, less affected by, the daily distractions that surround us? If we see that those things are happening, that we're becoming more focused, and that our material motivation is going down, then we can see that actually we're doing it right, and if we see that we're not making progress in those two regards, then we need to understand that there's some sort of adjustment that we have to make, because we're missing the whole point of why the Srimad Bhagavatam is there and what the process of bhakti is all about. And and if that's the situation, then we have to consult with Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. Go to our Guru and say, okay, I've noticed that after so much time, I'm still completely motivated by my devotional service. I'm looking for something in return. And it's few and far between when I'm actually engaging in devotional service, because I'm thinking about so many other things. And then of course the guru will consult the shastra, and other sadhus will encourage us. They'll share their stories with us of when they went through a similar situation, what helped them get through it, like that. And so this is what our process is all about, and this is confirmed all throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam. The whole point of the Srimad Bhagavatam is to get us to gradually come to the point where we are engaging in uninterrupted and unmotivated devotional service. So I'm going to stop here and see if there are any questions, comments, additions, subtractions, corrections, etc. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. It looks like we have a hand up from Renuka Mataji. Please ask your question.
Yeah, Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you for today's lecture.
Hare Krishna.
So what is wrong in doing a regular job and encouraging others in the ISKCON community to also take up a job if they have not done a job, like regular 9-to-5 job, so that they have a means of sustenance, like for their basics like food, clothing, and shelter. So you can be a devotee and you can do a job as well, because at the end of the day, who is going to take care of you? Like, isn't it important for every devotee to have their own job so that they can have their own dignity in getting their own food, clothing, and shelter?
Thank you for that question. To answer the first, so there are a few parts of that question. The first part of the question is, what is wrong with having a job? And there's nothing wrong with having a job. It's the mentality that we have to focus on. So if someone has a full-time job and they are understanding that, I'm doing this job for the service of Krishna. So first when we first sort of make this transition from material consciousness to Krishna consciousness, the first thing we do is we start engaging the fruits of the activities in Krishna service, right? So if we have our job and then we say, okay, well, at least I'm going to use the fruits of the activity, the money, to engage in Krishna service. They'll make donations, or they'll, buy things for the deities, things like that. The next step in changing our consciousness from self-consciousness to Krishna consciousness is to make it so not just the fruits of the activity, but the activity itself is directly linked with Krishna. And a lot of times you could still do exactly what you're doing and then just have it directly linked with Krishna. Sometimes you have to make some sort of adjustment. But what we're talking about here is the consciousness. And so some people can, engage their consciousness properly in Krishna at a full-time job, and they won't be distracted by it. And then there are others who they prefer to engage in a very different way. And so, for example, there are devotees who are full-time pujaris. They'll live in a temple and they'll take care of the deities. They wake them up in the morning, they dress them, they offer them food, like that. And that's all they do, some devotees. And some do a little half and half, like that. And so there was another part of your question where you said, who's going to take care of these devotees if they don't have full-time jobs? Who's going to provide for them? And the answer to that question is Krishna. And this is what Krishna consciousness is all about. You should know that if you are engaged in a full-time job and you are making money to provide for your food and shelter, it's actually not you who are providing it. It is Krishna who is providing it. We can't accumulate anything by ourselves. Everything is given to us by the Supreme Lord. The invocation of Sri Isopanishad, Isavasyamidam Sarvam. Oh, I got a different verse stuck in my head now. I forget. Somebody help me out here.
Om Purnam.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I'm on mantra 1 now. Sorry, not the invocation. Isavasamidam sarvam. What's the second half of that line? I got a different verse in my head for the second half. Yo me vedita. No. Anyway, so the translation of this verse is that everything inanimate or inanimate is provided by Krishna, right? And anyone who tries to claim something outside of his quota is they don't understand who everything belongs to. So essentially, this means that if we think that we are the doers of our activities, if we think that the results that come from what we're doing is actually caused by our own activities, then we're actually thieves. We're stealing from Krishna. Krishna is the source of everything. So whether he's giving us our food and shelter as a result of us indirectly doing a job, or if he's giving it to us directly, if we're sitting in the woods and he's just, sending people to hand us stuff, or, whatever the case may be, Krishna is the one that's providing. We can't provide anything for ourselves. And this has to be the consciousness. If it's not our consciousness, then it is what we are, what is known as self-conscious. We're not Krishna conscious, we're self-conscious. If we think that, I am providing for myself and my family by doing this job, then we're seriously illusioned. So Krishna takes care of everyone, not just his devotees. He provides the necessities of life for everyone, not just the humans, even the animals. The animals, they get their quotas, and the humans get their quotas. And so this current model of capitalism, it's what most people are subscribing to, but it's an illusion that these people are actually, creating their protection or their sustenance. Everything is actually coming from Krishna. So you can engage in a job and have the proper consciousness, and understand that this is Krishna that's providing. And you can also not have a job and have that correct consciousness. It's the consciousness we're going for. Now, of course, the other side of that is you can also have a person that's a freeloader. They decide not to work, but they also decide not to do anything else. And they're not really engaging, in any particular service, but they're, hoping that someone else takes care of them. That's not what we're going for either. But if someone thinks that just because a devotee doesn't have a full-time job, that they're equated to these, like freeloaders, then the point is being missed. So the consciousness is the important thing to observe here. No matter what activity one is performing, that's today's verse. All occupational engagements are certainly meant for ultimate liberation. They should never be performed for material gain. So all occupational engagements are meant for ultimate liberation, whether it's a full-time job or if it's, doing pujari service or whatever it is, whatever your duty is, you're meant to do it for Krishna. Does that answer your question, Renuka?
No, it does not answer my question, but anyways, that's fine.
Well,
my question
please
was,
clarify the question.
So my question was, somebody has to foot in the bill, even that somebody is working and they are giving it in the form of donation. What I'm saying is, at the end of the day, somebody else is making the money so that they can fund that money or pipeline that money into this project, like, maintain full-time pujaris. So either you work or you make someone else around you work. At the end of the day, somebody is minting the money by working a job. So how can you tell that, okay, some people make money, some people will be full-time pujaris? I mean, if you apply a rule from an organization, that rule has to be universal to all the people.
Thank you for clarifying the question. And I feel that I attempted to answer it, but we might have missed each other there. So the point is, and this is a very important point to understand. This is the essential point of the Krishna consciousness movement. Is the way that you're wording the question, it sounds like you're saying the people that work are footing the bill for the people that aren't working. And what I was trying to convey is that the people who work aren't really footing the bill. Krishna's footing the bill. Krishna's giving them the money through their particular job. If they didn't give the money, let's say everyone said, you know, hey, I've been supporting this temple and, you know, with all my money that I make at my job, and, you know, and I'm sick of it because nobody else is doing anything. And so they stop giving money. Do you think Krishna's not going to give money? It's Krishna that's giving the money. No matter what. If everyone had this mentality that, you know, they're no longer going to support the temple because they think it's unfair, still everything that is needed by the temple would still be there. It's still provided. There are so many stories where, you know, sometimes like a big tax bill will come up, right, for the temple, and the devotees will be wondering, how is this possibly going to be paid for? And you know, they're trying, and then they're going on these book distribution marathons, and then all of a sudden somebody, you know, someone just, they didn't even take a book, they just hand one of the devotees an envelope. They have no clue who it is. They never seen him before, they never saw him again after that, and it's the exact amount that is owed. We saw that too in Philadelphia temple. The boiler stopped working, so there was no heat in the temple, and the same sort of situation happened. The donations all come from Krishna. They may come through other people, through agencies, but it's actually Krishna who's providing it. So the people who work, if they want to give to the temple and support it, that's fine. They shouldn't feel that they have to, and they certainly shouldn't feel that they are giving money to the devotees or to Krishna. It's that they are using the money that Krishna gave them to engage in Krishna service. And you could do that however you want. You know, it doesn't have to be, you know, supporting devotees. As a matter of fact, if you feel, if one feel, not you personally, but if one feels that they themselves are supporting devotees, that's not the best way to give a donation. We see that in Bhagavad Gita. It talks about the different types of charity and the mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance. And so we want to come to the point where we understand that we aren't giving anything to anybody. We're just, you know, we're using what's given to us by Krishna to serve Krishna in another way. And that's the mentality we're looking for. And that's what, you know, Srila Vasudeva was despondent about, is because people were misunderstanding. People were thinking, no, this is what religion is, and it's not what religion is. Religion isn't, you know, I am using what's mine to support somebody else. It's not yours. And this is the point that we have to understand. And this is why Srila Vasudeva then focused on what devotional service was all about. And it's all about the consciousness. It's not about the activity. It's not about, you know, accumulating something and using it for something else. Did that clarify your question, Mother Renika, or is it still unclear?
Yeah, it clarifies the question, but you know, human beings, they may say one thing today, 10 years down the lane or 20 years down the lane. Human beings' emotions and human beings, they are not gods. So every human being changes, and, you know, and some people, like, you know, some devotees may think that, you know, I have served the temple like this many hours and this many years. And sometimes, you know, like there may be some misunderstandings between people, between devotees. And at the end of the day, after 10, 20, 30 years of service, there may be some, like, you know, some misfeelings. oh, I should have done a job, proper job, and I could have had something. Oh, whereas I served here, and now some misunderstandings are going on. So, those things will end up because you did not have a job in the first place, and probably you should have been encouraged to have a job and contributed a part of your savings or whatever you could make in your month to Lord Krishna. But in the first place, you had a job, so there was something to hold on to instead of depending upon, trusting Lord Krishna. Trusting Lord Krishna is absolutely important. But what I'm saying is, human beings manage the temples, right? Human beings are human beings. I mean, they are not gods. They are not Lord Krishnas or Radharanis. They are just human beings, and human beings are going to behave like human beings, right? If someone says they're perfect.
Oh, you just cut off there.
No, I was not cut off. I was muted by Dronacharya Prabhu, I believe.
Yeah, we're going on the same. I think there may be other people that want to talk. I mean, if we can get to the point quickly.
Yeah, I'll just address that. I'll just address that quickly. So we have heard, these are unfortunate stories that we've heard. Sometimes also neophyte devotees will think there's something called falgu vairagya. It's when we renounce something falsely. It's we outwardly give up something, but inwardly we're still attached to it. That's something that we're also not meant to do. And we see this often too. I've done it. I've done it before. I gave up things before I was ready to give them up. And then what happens is later you take them, but you do them again. And then you learn the lesson and then you can give it up. But the thing is, so it wasn't that. The problem is the consciousness. It always comes to the consciousness. So in our consciousness, if we feel we should be doing something, but we don't do it anyway. So if I feel when I'm a young devotee that I should get a job and support something, then I should do that. That's absolutely what I should do. If I do fully understand that, it's not the job that makes the money, it's actually Krishna that does it, and I engage in Krishna's service directly instead, Krishna is gonna take care of you, but if you have that deep-seated thought that the whole time you're doing it, I shouldn't be doing this, I should be out there, so if you're not convinced of it yet, don't do it. That's the thing. That's how it works.
I'm not talking about myself. I'm taking care of myself.
When I say you, I mean you in general. I don't mean you in specifically. I should have said one instead of you. But in general, if one is not convinced of it, one should not do it. We should serve to the level that we're convinced, and then we should also make sure that we're becoming more and more convinced gradually. It doesn't have to be, black and white overnight, like now I'm going to give up everything, and just completely serve Krishna, which is what some people have done, but they weren't ready for it. And we see that they weren't ready for it because then they fall back into it and they do the same thing they did before. And I'm actually glad that you brought this up, because this is an important thing to understand, is that when we're engaging in Krishna service, we don't want to go too far beyond what our understanding is, but at the same time, we don't want to stay exactly where we are. So we do this litmus test. We see that if we're becoming less motivated, materially motivated, and if we're becoming more steady. And when we're not, sometimes we take little steps beyond our comfort zone. That's what faith is all about. But this whole concept, and you're right, this whole concept of, jumping too far ahead and then regretting it later, it's an unfortunate phenomenon, but it's certainly not the fault of Srimad Bhagavatam or devotional service or even the devotees, because it's very clear how we're meant to engage in devotional service and how we're meant to progress. And so if we apply that properly, then it's a surefire way to get to Krishna. Now there are missteps. Sometimes we do something that's not ideal or not right, and then we have to deal with that. And like I said, it's unfortunate, but if that's the problem, is that we made a decision that was wrong, and we weren't wholeheartedly into it. We may have felt that we were, that's the way that goes. Does that clear that up?
I'm wondering, how does the dynamic, the sustenance of temples or sustenance of the movement, how is the dynamic maintained? Because you have to sustain the movement long term, right?
Yes, but we have to also understand that Krishna is in control of all of that. If we think we're in control and we try to control it, if we're trying to control it ourselves, it's not going to go very well. It's going to be just like any material project. But if we surrender to Krishna, we follow Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, then everything will go in a dynamic way.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is Lord Krishna controls everything. We are just like basic human beings.
Absolutely. Lord Krishna is in control. If we think we're in control of something, it's not going to go well. We're going to rely on our own karma. So I wouldn't say we're basic human beings, we're Krishna's servants. So anything can happen through that. If we have the proper amount of faith and we put forth our endeavor and sincerity, if Krishna wants something to happen, it'll happen. If he wants a mountain to be moved, the mountain will be moved. If he wants, whatever the case may be, it's not impossible. If we think we are the doer, we are going to rely on our own karma. If we understand that Krishna is the ultimate doer, then we no longer rely on karma, we rely on what Krishna's desire is. So if he wants something miraculous to happen, something miraculous will happen. But if we rely on our own karma, the only way something miraculous is going to happen if we have really, really good karma. But really, really good karma isn't going to get us all that far. We're still going to be in this material world. But yes, Krishna's in control. He's in charge. The dynamic is all up to him. And all we can do is take our consciousness from self-consciousness to Krishna consciousness. We have to give up the attitude of, I can fix this, I can do this, I can, we can't, absolutely cannot. That's all material motivation. But we do what we can, and we let the result up to Krishna. It looks like Bob has a question.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I just want to piggyback off of what you and Mother Renika were saying. So does that kind of go back to like Bhagavad Gita 1863, where Krishna basically says like, hey, I laid this out for you, but do what you want. Like, I'm going to help you, but if you don't want it, that's cool. I'll be here anyway. If you do, great. Like, is that kind of what you two have been kind of getting at?
Yeah, very, very insightful, Bob. And this is what the philosophy is all about, is that Krishna gives us everything we need. And whether or not we're going to follow it, that's up to us, because we still have free will. Because he loves us that much that he allows us to, just walk all over him and not pay any attention to him and not heed any of his instructions. That's how much he loves us. We, on the other hand, don't love him that much yet, because if we did, then everything would be going quite well. But yeah, this is that's a good observation, Bob. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Charity Chandra Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
So this concept of performing devotional service, but trying to enjoy maybe the fruits of it in some degree, especially at the neophyte stage, enjoying the results of the devotional service. A long time ago, I was given some advice to get your opinion on it. It was from a devotee that said that from time to time, or in a regular way, try to do some service that maybe you don't necessarily look at as, would maybe be, in your top 5 list of things to do.
Mm-hmm.
It may be kind of challenging to you, just to kind of get out of the mindset that I'm doing this for my enjoyment. actually just surrendering, that Krishna, the Supreme Master, is asking me to do something and I'm willing to do it regardless. And it made sense to me. I just, I wanted to get your opinion on that kind of approach or thought.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. When I talk about faith, I talk about how you have to be willing to step out of your comfort zone. And that's sort of along the lines with what you're talking about there. Is from time to time, we do have to do something that's not in our top 5. Because then what we're doing is we're showing Krishna that, we're willing to do something that's not in our comfort zone. So, and that's what he's looking for. He's not looking for, I'm just going to do whatever I'm doing anyway and, sort of make a vague connection to Krishna while doing it. That's not Krishna consciousness. That's like, that's being courteous of Krishna. It's not being conscious of him. We're saying, oh yeah, I'll acknowledge you while I'm doing what I was going to do anyway, but you're not that important. That's what that kind of service is. But yeah, when we sort of step out of our comfort zone and engage in something that we wouldn't normally see as something that we would do, that's when when we do that, and we do that with that consciousness that, okay, no, I want to do this for Krishna, then there's a lot of advancement that can be made when we do things like that. That's my opinion on that.
And thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
Yeah.
I have a quick question. Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Question is, I don't properly follow the devotional service, all the steps, but while doing any work in the home, like cooking, cleaning, vacuum cleaning, dishes, it is always there in my mind. I keep chanting, mostly Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, sometimes Hare Krishna. But is it okay to do that instead of strictly following the steps of devotional service?
You're chanting all the time. That is devotional service.
Oh, okay.
The best method for devotional service in this age of Kali is chanting Hare Krishna. And it's funny because you're mentioning cleaning up around the house and chanting, and when we're chanting, it's actually also cleaning our hearts. So you're doing double cleaning. You're cleaning up the house and you're also cleaning out your heart. And what happens is, if you keep chanting like this, then everything becomes clearer and clearer, and you'll see what next step you should take to enhance your devotional service. That's the nature of chanting. So yeah, keep doing that.
Okay. Thank you, Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Anything else?
Okay. If not, we'll end here. It's 9 o'clock. There's actually another class that will begin on here momentarily. Thank you so much, Chandra Prabhu, for joining us.
Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Very, very informative.
Very nice class.
Something that we have to really hold in our thoughts and consciousness. This verse and this concept that you spoke about today. So thank you very much. And also joining us from Kentucky, having to travel to your neighbor's house and get set up. Thank you for doing that.
My pleasure.
You made the extra effort for us. We certainly appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Everyone have a wonderful Krishna conscious day. Tonight we have a program, our family business reading, to inspire devotees that want to get involved in distributing Srila Prabhupada's books. 7 o'clock tonight. Hope to see you there. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Vancha kalpatarubhishya kripasindovyeva pattanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna to everybody.